All right, hello, Flight Sim community. This is Beetle Beast, and here we are on the ground in Wichita. The weather has cleared out. It's a whole new day here on the ground inside of Flight Sim. We're going to take off today out of Beech Field in Wichita and head off to the east. Going to be landing in my home state in the city of Joplin, Missouri. So, without further ado, brakes are off. Power's going to come in. Looks like it should be pretty calm weather. Get her rolling. And power's made. Needing left rudder for some strange reason right now. It's like my nose wheel was almost maybe stuck to the right. Not quite sure. Airspeed's looking good. And a little bit of rotation. Gears coming up. So it's been a little bit since I've been in the sim. I was just taking a look at our last leg flying over here to Beech Field. That was done in late September. It is now the early part of November. So obviously weather has changed a little bit since the last time we flew. We had a nice break, I guess you could say, on the ground there at Beech Field. But yeah, we're once again in our trusty Cessna 210 and making this VFR journey back across to towards the east, eventually hopefully terminating all of this once we reach beautiful sunny Key West, Florida, on our northwest to southeast flight across the United States. In other words, giving me something to do in Flight Sim to give me purpose in this game. It's pretty cool looking mowing around that field. And yeah, luckily here, this is also going to complete my journey across one of my least favorite states to fly over. No offense, Kansas. I used to be a resident, as I know I've said before. I really do love the state of Kansas. Loved my time in Kansas. Hate flying over Kansas. And nothing has ever changed my mind. So it's currently early morning here in the Midwest. And we'll be starting off. So like I said, it's a whole new day, whole new place. The seasons have changed slightly. So, you know, all in all, we're just going to be off on this little bit of exploration. Other things that have changed, the sim has changed. Obviously, like I said, the seasons have changed. You might see some orange trees down there. But moving even past just the seasonal changes, we have Sim Update 4 that we're currently running, well, Sim Update 4 Beta. This is the second time I've downloaded and installed SU4. If you probably can't see it, but I do have a frames, an FPS counter that's currently running in the background here via the, it's not open, open composite. Just to kind of give me an idea as to what performance I'm getting. But I've got my game locked in here at 40 frames per second max. And then using ASW to bring that up to 80 FPS. I am running in TAA mode. And for the anti-aliasing, I can never pronounce that word correctly. And I have, otherwise, let's see here, nothing else special. It's just everything's kind of running at the factory settings. But like I said, 40 frames per second locked. Auto FPS is in the background to change detail as we climb and descend. And yeah, all in all, I think the game's been running pretty well. I was playing around last night briefly on the West Coast. Did get a little bit laggy at Seattle-Tacoma, SeaTac. But otherwise, I had some frame drops, and then it would come back, then it would drop, and then come back, kind of as it was trying to load in some details. But that's a fairly busy and well-designed airport. So there's a lot of information that's on the ground there, and that kind of affected it. I almost guarantee you that was affecting it. I don't know, maybe we'll go up to about 10,000 a day. We'll go up kind of high. It's all kind of flyover country. Once again, no offense, Kansas, but it is, and you know it, and I know it. And don't worry, so is Missouri. I'm not gonna try to act superior here. There's an awful lot of the Midwest. By the way, I will say this, though. A lot of the Midwest, for people who haven't got out and traveled anywhere or haven't gone a whole lot of places, there are some really awesome cities inside of the Midwest. Kansas City is actually a really cool city. Wichita kind of leaves a little bit to be desired. And I know someone's going to say, Kansas City's in Missouri. I know, I lived there. I also lived on the Kansas side in Kansas City, so I am aware of where Kansas City's at. St. Louis is interesting. It's a little more rough and tumbled than Kansas City on a regular basis. It's kind of more rough and tumbled. But St. Louis has Cardinals, which is kind of cool. Unless you're watching them this year, then they're not. But yeah, all in all, I would say the Midwest has some really kind of unique gems. You know, even going across, Indianapolis is a neat town. Obviously, there's a lot of love for Chicago from a lot of people I know. But Ohio's cool. Columbus is a neat town. Cincinnati's a neat town, too. I really love Cleveland, although it's cold as all get out in the wintertime. Go during the summer, and it's great. Yeah, there's some cool stuff, you know, across these middle states. And we're not going to see most of them because we're going to, hopefully, some of the smaller airports. So the first airport on this leg, I was actually going to be landing at another airport that was kind of close by Kansas. And when I planned all of this out, my original plan was that I was going to be using the Skyhawk for the majority of this flying. With its significantly lower ground speeds, I decided not to do that, especially across the middle part of the country. It's just, there's no offense to it being too slow. I mean, but at 100 knots, 115 knots, it is. And I would much prefer to get to some of these destinations a little quicker than flying around in the Skyhawk. So for that reason, and that reason alone, we're not in the Skyhawk. And like I said, we are in the 210. It's going to give me a little bit better speed, especially once we get up to cruise. I mean, we're going faster than a Skyhawk would in a climb, and we're climbing at over 1,000 feet a minute. So we're climbing faster than the Skyhawk cruises. And honestly, this airplane's just been really good. I want to once again thank Carenado for making a really cool airplane. And I know these cross-country videos don't have that many views, so not a lot of people are going to see it, but I do enjoy still making it. And I'll try to keep making some of that flight instructor-esque content. And maybe, you know, maybe I'll try something out where I'll pull out my old flight instructor binder. Maybe we'll make some flights that are directly related to the type of training events and environments you would get inside. I did try one once with an engine failure. I thought that would be kind of fun, and it is. It's kind of fun to play with. And it's the type of stuff that if you are playing with some of the more complex airplanes in the game, engine failures are far more common. And you actually will see them occasionally in the sim. And once again, I will never not stress enough the value of sim flying as a training aid. And you can gain tons of proficiency simply in doing some of the steps and practicing those types of procedures. And I think a lot of times people kind of get into this habit of saying, oh, it's just a game. And it is in so many ways. Yeah, you're not going to get a feel for the airplane, probably even with force feedback. You're not going to get a great feel for what an airplane's going to feel like. Better, yes. More immersive, yes. But it's not going to be perfect. You know, you're going to need force feedback on the rudders, force feedback on the ailerons, force feedback on your elevator in order to really get a feel. And even still, without motion, your brain is stuck trying to come up with what it's seeing and how the airplane's responding. But the game will do a great job of teaching specifically here, instrument flying, you can get a great scan down and practice a great scan simply by flying an airplane that has an instrument cluster that's very similar to what you have in your airplane. So for instrument flying, these things are top-notch. For VFR flying, with the newest updates of the game, and I don't mean like the sim updates here, but I'm talking about Flight Sim 2020, Flight Sim 2024, you can fly. The goal, they said when they made Flight Sim 2020, was that you should be able to fly VFR anywhere in the world. I think they succeeded. Earlier in the Flight Sim days, when I was in college and I was actually using Flight Sim on a somewhat regular basis to kind of augment some of my training, if I was flying across country, I could set it up to fly that cross country and look down and see, hey, there's a town. This is the town that I'm using on my VFR flight as my reference point. We're going to go up to 11.5, just FYI. So you don't think that I just flew through 10,000. I know where I'm going. Anyway, yeah, so it was set up that you could see points on the ground and towns, but you weren't getting great references. You got better at night because the outlines of the towns would be a little closer to the way they looked on your sectional outline chart. See attached image. But they still kind of lacked in detail. You know, you would see a river and you'd go, oh, I'm crossing the river. But it didn't look the way it would look in real life. If you look out the window right now, what you're seeing is what you get. Where the forests are, where the fact that there are creeks at, what the topography looks like, where the towns are, where the highways are, all of that is really, truly legit for Flight Sim and for flying in a real airplane. I mean, it's amazing. So yeah, you can fly this thing VFR anywhere you want to, and the game becomes a training aid. If you wanted to see, and I've done it before when I'm doing trips with work in our business jet, yeah, I'll test fly a flight into an unfamiliar airport to get an idea as to what the lay of the land is, to get an idea as to where the terrain actually is and what it's going to look like, so that you're a little bit better prepared before you go there, especially for places that I don't operate to on a regular basis. And no, it's not going to be 100%. The layout of the runways, that's going to be accurate. The layout of the terrain, that's going to be accurate. Are you going to be able to see the towers that are there? Probably not. I highly doubt that their vertical obstruction database in this game is updated on a regular basis. So someone's going to put a tower up, and I don't think that the game's going to update it and reflect it immediately. I don't know how often they pull that information from the U.S. government data sources that are out there regarding VOs, vertical obstructions. But I know that the terrain options, those things haven't updated in long periods of time. So no, that stuff's not going to be there. But like I said, in terms of many of the other items, the mountains will be in the right spot, the rivers will be in the right spot. That stuff's useful. And I do think that you can and will benefit from some familiarity from that type of stuff when you're flying. So yeah, I think it's useful for VFR flying. I think it's incredibly useful for IFR flying and IFR training. So if you are working through your instrument, highly, highly, highly recommend use yourself a sim, get yourself good at it. Heck, I used this stuff when I was first going off to the airlines and flying the Embraer for the first time. I mean, first jet I was ever in, bought the version of it. I think the company was Field Air. They had an Embraer 145 that you were able to get in. The cockpit was the same. It had the overhead panel. I could go through what the flows were supposed to look like when I was going through training, and then sitting in a Paper Tiger or sitting in the training aids that we had at Flight Safety when I finally got to Flight Safety to start going through the actual flows in their trainers that they had that were life size. But to have a little bit of familiarity with stuff before you went off to fly it, it's huge. Chair flying, never underestimate the value of chair flying. And I look at this kind of the same way. This is chair flying. It's just improved significantly. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and bring this back to 25 inches of manifold pressure, about 2,500. 2,400 RPM on the engine. We are now here at 11,500 feet, indicating 145 knots or so. Ground speed of 195 knots is pretty awesome. And if we look at our true, it's closer to about 170, so we got a little bit of a tailwind up here. And I haven't adjusted that true. It's just giving me a general. But I mean, we're close at 50 degrees. I mean, we're pretty close to standard. Maybe actually a little bit above standard because that's down to sea level. So we're above standard here. We're doing pretty well. So obviously it's a turbocharged airplane. You didn't lose power in that climb. Turbo normalized engine. This is a great airplane. If I had to pick an airplane probably to own and fly, a 210 would probably be pretty far up on that list. I think a Bonanza is probably a little bit cheaper to obtain in many ways. They're just a little bit more prevalent, especially these turbocharged 210s. You can find a regular 210, but you are stuck lower. And in this one, of course, you could go higher. There are oxygen right there, oxygen ports where you could log in and plug in and breathe on some oxygen and get a little bit higher out of it if you wanted to. Just recently, I saw a video of a guy in a Cub. I'm assuming it's got to be turbocharged. It was a carbon Cub, but they was up at 35,000 feet. And I think they were just saying that he maxed at 36,000 feet. He was getting passed by airliners doing 60 knots indicated. Absolutely insane in a Cub. I can't imagine how long it took to get up there. I also can't imagine how long it would take to get back down. But that's impressive. So good job on that brave soul who sucked on O2 so that they could cruise around way above an altitude where you should ever see a Cub. So 90 miles to go. Should be a little under 30 minutes here at altitude. Slowed down a little bit by pulling the power back, but we won't complain too much. So SU4 beta, that's what we're in right now. Like I said, I think the performance has been really good. I think last night was the first time I really was impressed with how well and how smooth the game was performing. First thing I noticed, and I'm sure anyone this isn't an SU4 beta review because I'm sure there's been a billion of them. But the first thing that I noticed was when I put on the HMD or any type of VR headset, the PC no longer displays the dual ports. So I'm going to be curious to see how this recording looks. This is the first recording I've made since we've been on SU4. So it used to be that it would display both eyes. You would end up with these little funky round borders kind of at the top and bottom. And then what I would do for our videos is I would crop them down appropriately so you could see a better part of the viewport. What I've noticed here, and I can't look at it now because once again I've got the headset on, but there's only one screen that's showing up now inside of the monitor. So it's no longer trying to render both eyes and display both of those to the monitor. I think that's huge. That's got to be a major performance gain. While playing the game, if I don't limit things with like ASW, I can get about 50 frames per second out of it, which is more than enough. Like I said, I'm only using ASW right now because I wanted to try it at an 80 hertz refresh rate, and I wanted to try it with auto FPS engaged. We'll see if I keep with that or not. I know a lot of folks have loved auto FPS. I think a lot of folks really were struggling to get any type of really good performance anyway with the game. I won't say that I get great performance, but I get pretty decent performance with the game anyway. Very little stutters normally. I was zipping around at building level in a helicopter around New York the other day, and I was still getting, my 40 frames per second. And 80 obviously with ASW, but I was getting 50 without anything, 55 frames per second, close to 60. It does seem as if the game tries to max me at 60 unless I use ASW, which I thought was interesting. because that's the most that shows up in here, and I haven't found out if I've got it limited somewhere else. I know it's not limited inside of the settings in the game, but yeah. So anyway, so there's that. But yeah, so thus far, I will say I think the performance inside of this version of the game has been really improved for VR. So I'm really enjoying that. Still do have, like I said, I'm in TAA mode right now. And I'm also running foveated rendering, which is noticeable, but it's not bad. It's still pretty good. The masking size is still pretty large. It does still give me a boxed effect when I'm flying through clouds in IMC. So that's when it becomes noticeable. If you are IMC, it's very annoying. But outside of IMC, outside of being in the clouds, it's really good. So, take it for what it's worth. I'm really enjoying it. Anything else about the beta that I'm thinking of? Oh, this is the second time I've used it. I'm happy with it right now because what they've included, if you notice my little cursor here, hopefully you can see it, they included it. The first time I attempted to use the beta, they had removed the cursor, and that required me now to use the touch pointers or the controllers for the Oculus. I don't hate reaching out and using the Oculus controllers, although I will say for almost everything I could, I try to bind a key, and I've got a lot of peripherals right now. I actually have 2 MFDs that you can't see that are directly in front of me. They're not useful. I use them in DCS because they're the ones that are set up for the F-18. But I use them for push buttons. And I say the F-18, I think these are the F-16 sized. These are the cheap MFDs, but they work fine for push buttons. The button count's the same. So I use those in DCS so that I can reach up, touch something tactilely, and then just press it, and then watch the MFDs actually work inside of the airplane. It works really good in that sim. I also have the Orion 2 throttle and all the buttons associated with it. And I've had to repurpose some of those for Flight Sim as they're not really set up for, it's more for a combat flight simulator. But I also added, and I think I mentioned it in my last video, the PTO panel here, the panel of takeoff, which is also a Win-Wing product, but it gets me a landing gear and flaps, hooks, things like that associated on that panel as well. And it's tactile. I can touch it. It works for the parking brake. I love that aspect of it. But it got me, a lot of redundancy between that stick or that panel and the Orion 2. So I do have buttons that are associated with the Orion 2 now on the PTO panel, and that freed up buttons on the Orion 2 to do other things. So I like to be able to use a button if I can use buttons for flipping fuel tanks. I did, of course, if I can use it for selecting altitudes, I will. That way I don't have to interact with the virtual cockpit all the time if I can avoid it. So that's kind of the goal. But that said, how often am I over here using it? Not a ton. But it was still a noticeable downgrade in SU4 when they got rid of the mouse control. Because if I am trying to, say, scroll in an altitude, it can be a little bit more difficult to do unless I have a keybind for it using the touch pointers. Working and manipulating the FMS is the same thing, or in this case here, the 530 or the 430s. They're a bit of a pain to find and use the inner and outer scroll wheels without having the ability to kind of click on them and then use your scroll mouse button to do some work. So they added it back in a later update for SU4 beta, and it's been phenomenal. So then I came back to it, and I've been loving it for the little bit of use that I've been giving it. So I'm pretty happy with it right now. Slowly making progress. 70 miles, 190 knots of ground speed. Now 189, sorry. And 20 minutes, so that's not too bad. So yeah, the other one that I've been thinking about, I have been thinking about buying the Black Square Bonanza. I have the Carenado Bonanza already, and I know that they've said that the Black Square adds on additional realism. The only reason I haven't done it is there is something kind of nice on these Carenados about hopping in, starting up, and going. Now, the question is, how realistic is the realism? And that's one of the things that I kind of dislike in a lot of ways by a lot of the airplanes in here. They'll say, oh, if you're abusing the engine, it's going to die. Prematurely, maybe. But I'm not going to say anyone's abusing engines, but I will say this. So I flew Skyhawks for a long time. My 4 years that I was in college learning how to fly, flew Skyhawks. After those 4 years were done, or during that time period, as most of you probably know, I worked in aircraft maintenance. Did that for 4 years. I remember when we got our Skyhawks, when I got there, the airplanes were a year old. By the time I left, they were obviously 5 years old. And then I spent a year instructing, so I guess they were 6 years old by the last time I flew one. And I know they're still flying those airplanes to this day, at least some of them, not all of them. They've gotten rid of some of them. But during that time period, during that 6 years, I remember when the airplanes got to 2,000 hours. And I was there for the first set of engine changes. I was working maintenance when we first started doing engine changes on those. So I've probably hung, we had 17 airplanes, 16 Skyhawks that were like that. I don't think all of them had gotten to 2,000 hours by the time I left maintenance, but I had probably done a dozen engine changes on those at that time period. During that time period, we had one engine failure on those airplanes. So 2,000 hours and 16 airplanes. You can do the math on it if you want. I guess it's 36,000 hours, something like that, of flying with one engine failure. The one engine failure was actually on a newer engine that was put onto an airplane. It was an RG Skyhawk, and the reason it failed was carburetor icing. There was no actual physical failure of the engine itself. It was carb icing, which caused the engine failure. They put the airplane into a field. We yanked the engine back off of it, replaced it, and then they went off and they flew it again. And that was a great airplane, actually. And on a Skyhawk RG, 172 RG, a Cutlass, as they're known. So anyway, yeah, all in all, these things are really exceptionally reliable. So that's one of the things that I kind of wonder, because for the most part, and I'm not going to say that people were abusing them, most of the airplanes weren't run at wide open throttle. But they were run pretty darn close to it. Most of the people who were flying them, they weren't pulling them back to 2,000 RPM and babying the engine. No, they were running them at 2,400 RPM, on a 2,500 or 2,600 RPM red line. They would pull it back a little bit. You didn't overspeed the engine. You weren't running it past its red line limit. But people would run it up pretty close to it because you were paying for your flight hours by the hour, and granted, you needed the hours to get time, but most of the kids wanted to get somewhere. So they were flying these Skyhawks around at 2,400 RPM, and they'd lean them out. We definitely all leaned the airplanes out. But even still, for the pattern work that people were doing, and they spent a lot of time in the pattern too, people wouldn't lean them out. You'd be running the airplane around at speed and almost rich. We were changing out and cleaning out spark plugs every 100 hours. No, heck, you're probably doing it more than that. We were doing 25-hour oil changes, I think, on these things, 25 or 50-hour oil changes. Not 100-hour inspections on them. They were still doing that, but they had them on a rolling maintenance program, so they were, of course, getting more than you would get with just a standard annual inspection. But yeah, it was pretty ridiculous, the amount of just how reliable they were. So that's part of the reason I haven't bought a Black Square, because truthfully, I think the reliability and the serviceability of these airplanes is probably closer to being on par with what I see in one of these Carenados, where you start it up and it works and you fly it and then you put it away. And yeah, if you treat them nicely, you're not going to have an engine failure. It just, statistically speaking, isn't going to happen. But I do think that you can add a lot more interest in the sim by being able to simulate some of those things. Simulate systems that do wear out over time. Everything from vacuum pumps that are going to fail to, once again, engines that could fail. Alternators that can fail. And I know that a lot of that stuff does exist inside of the game, but it's not modeled really well inside of the basic airplanes. But I've had a couple of engine failures I had electrical failures inside of the career mode in the Caravan early on in the game. I've had engine failures in the Caravan during the game. I've tried to fly a few of the airplanes like, hey, what if I don't do my maintenance? What happens? Well, the engines fail. Hey, if you don't do your maintenance and fix things with the flight controls, what happens? Oh, you notice that you can't roll because your aileron cables have failed. Your autopilot servo will fail. So some of that stuff does exist if you don't do the maintenance that's requested and required of the airplane. How does it relate to real life? Probably not all that well, because I don't think that the majority of flight sims creators were out there actually looking through to figure out what the failure rate is of common parts and how often you're going to see that. I just don't think that homework was done. So, if someone's out there in the flight sim community who actually has done that, please come back here and tell me. Put it in the comments. I'd love to know. I'd love to hear from you guys on that. Until then, I'm going to stick with my assumption based off of the other things that I've seen inside of the game, especially when it was initially rolled out, that some of that stuff probably wasn't completed. And I mean, yeah, if you start looking at the statistical data on that, first off, you'll probably be bored out of your mind in your design, or your desire is to design a game and a sim. But even past that, it's what are you really going to garner by making it as realistic as possible? Maybe not much. But the system complexity, for people who really enjoy that, especially who enjoy it in a sim function, yeah, go for it, get it, do it. But I am curious, and I've thought about it, and I might. We'll see. We'll see if I end up buying one of the black square designed Bonanzas. We'll see. Getting a sip of coffee. We can keep trucking along. 13 minutes. We're at 11,000 feet. So if we take that and we use the rule of 3, at 33 miles out, about 10 miles from now, we're going to want to start our descent. It's nice and smooth out. We'll probably run it right up into the yellow during the descent. At least that's my plan. We'll see. So we can make up a little bit more time on the way there. It's set up right now to land on runway 13. I'll probably overfly midfield, see if I can take a look at the wind. Winds were calm when we departed. Like I said, there's no weather anywhere here to really worry about. So I'm not concerned about that at all. Let's see what the field elevation is for Joplin. Move this little thing out of our way a little bit. I could probably just grabbed it. I'm using not the mouse. I was using the other one on my screen here. Fly. Scroll down. Joplin information. 968 feet, so 1,000 feet. So we'll be descending down to 2,000 feet. So we really don't have to descend quite as much. 240 at 6 now. 10 miles and clear. Let's see. They've got 1331, 1836, 523. 23 would be their recommended runway. Yeah, we can do that. What's the distance on 23? 3,500 feet. Yeah, we can definitely do that. So we'll go down to 2,000 feet and we'll plan for runway 23. Scroll over. We should be getting kind of close. Zoom, zoom. There's us. Aswia. Neosha and Joplin. Yeah, this is areas that I am semi-familiar with. I'm trying to think. I think I did a couple of flights to Joplin in a Skyhawk ages ago. I've been there in the jet a few times with work, and a bunch of times actually. And I know for a fact that they're not going to have this airport look like it does in real life, only in the fact of I can't imagine really the purpose. There's a couple of cool buildings, a little FBO, which is cool. They've got a few old images on the wall. There's an old picture of Charles Lindbergh and his wife. It's kind of cool. They're both wearing, I'll see. You know what? I'm going to see if I can find that. I'll put it here. They're both wearing some winter flying gear. I will say his wife is a cutie. She just looks adorable in the winter flying gear. But of Charles and his wife, and they're flying around and had landed in Joplin apparently as part of a flight tour. That picture should be right over there if I found it online. Anyway, yeah. So this is I've been here a few times, and obviously it was a site, if you know about the Joplin tornado, which is happened, 2009, I want to say, somewhere around there. Someone else will probably correct me. Actually, I'll probably correct myself because I probably just posted that underneath me too. So yeah, that was a pretty terrible ordeal for the state of Missouri and the people of Joplin. You know, Missouri is part of, we're not really in Tornado Alley, but we're close by, and we definitely see tornadoes around here as we go, and occasionally they hit places and they hurt people. So all right, so we're going to be doing about 200 knots in the descent. We're going to need about 1,000 feet per minute for our descent rate in order to be coming down at a 3-degree rate. We're right at 30 miles right now, so we're going to be stopping at 2,000 feet. So we've got a little ways to go. Try to find a pitch attitude that's going to work. I did not pull our power back. I was letting the airplane accelerate. It doesn't seem like it's actually going to get quite to 160 knots without changing something else. Close those up. We don't need them. Don't know if that'll give us any extra speed here. Real airplane, it would. And I could use the autopilot. It does work. It works actually really well in this airplane. But I've been hand flying the whole time, so I think I'll just keep doing that. But yeah, 210 knots in the descent. We'll say, you know, this airplane is really enjoyable for doing VFR flying and kind of, you know, taking up some space. So I am noticing a little stutter. We'll see. I'm not sure if that's going to show up for you guys or not. My guesstimation is that the game is attempting, or the auto FPS is attempting to add in detail as we descend. And if that's the case, it might prove in why I don't particularly like using auto FPS all the time. So maybe I will be moving back away from it again. We'll see. Because we're still here. We're middle Kansas, or eastern Kansas. There's not a lot of detail. There's really not any good reason that it couldn't be providing exceptionally high quality terrain without providing a ton of extra information. I mean, Joplin's coming up, but that's not exactly the biggest airport in the world either. So we'll see. This could be the last time we use auto FPS during one of these videos, but we'll see. All right, through 9,000 feet. Let's take a look here. Make sure we have a current altimeter setting set in. Just did that update. So what I'll plan to do, I'm going to go ahead and cross over midfield, and then I'll realign us with runway 23 there at Joplin, and we'll go from there. 18 miles away, we would definitely be giving them a call. Chat with the tower when we get there. So at this point here, we have to lose the better part of 4,000 feet or so. So about 12 miles out. We're still looking really good on the descent rate. Pretty certain that's the airport right in front of me there. Should be 10 miles away. And yeah, I guess welcome to Missouri. So hopefully the remainder of these flights will keep on trucking ourselves along. Like I said, I'm going to try to find some more content to make regarding some of the flight training stuff, I think. Unless somebody actually has something that they would love to see, then in that case, of course, I will do that instead. And I might do some more stuff, just kind of working through, jet operation, business jet operation stuff. I've also thought about doing one that's kind of similar to what a check ride would look like in a business jet, just for the sake of people so they can see kind of what to expect. If they were wondering, hey, what are these pilots actually trained to do and how's it look? Obviously, most people aren't going to be in Level D simulators when they, the vast majority of the public's not going to be flying around in a Level D simulator. You can, and I will say this, you can buy blocks of time in sims just to go out there and fly around them. They won't be certified. It's not going to be an FAA approved program, but there are people who have actual sims that they will allow other people to rent and fly. You'll see it. Oh, my husband's always wanted to fly a 737, so for his birthday I bought him a 737 sim experience. I think it's really cool. I wouldn't do it because, once again, I have flown a bunch of Level D sims over the years. Gosh, that performance just took an absolute hit. I've flown a bunch of Level D sims over the years, so I don't have a lot of desire to go out there and sit in one for the sake of, relaxation, because they have trauma from them. Every time I'm in one, the engines are always failing, or they're on fire, or something similar to that effect. So, yeah, so I won't be doing that. But if that's your thing, do your thing. I'll set this thing up to be runway 23. We'll overfly, and then, I was moving my heading my course around so that I have a visual representation of what I'm doing. We'll enter a downwind for runway 23 and then land on runway 23 if it's there. Because I'll be honest with you, I don't actually see it here. And probably looked at the wrong airport. Let's tab again. Let's take a look. Because if not, I'm landing on the other runway. Joplin, info, runways, 523. Oh, there it is. I see it now. All right, cool. It's the little one. It was just hidden. Dang asphalt runways. It's like a little terminal building up there. There's the old terminal building, which I think the FBO is right there, yeah. And the little tower's right there. There's my runway. So gear speed in this one's, I think, 165 knots is your operating speed. We're well underneath that. It's going to be what's going to really help slow the airplane down and get rid of the horn. So here we are on our downwind leg. We'll drop the gear. All right, I got wheels. Underneath the first flaps. Go ahead and drop in. First notch of flaps. Mixtures back to rich. Prop is forward again. See, I'm going to say that the choppiness that we're experiencing here is as relation to auto FPS. So I'm going to probably not use that again because it's really annoying me. Hopefully it doesn't go choppy on me right at a critical time where I might need it during the flare and landing, because there's nothing about the Joplin airport, once again, that should be making it go. I gave it a pass when it happened, and it wasn't actually even this bad, but I gave it a pass when it happened at SeaTac. But yeah, this one here is just kinda getting silly for no good reason. Alright, we got the 2 notches of flaps in, gears down, flaps down. There's our runway. A little fast, slowing it up a little bit. Round out, powers out. And start a little bit of braking. We could have made that one, but I'm going to roll it to the end. I do believe there should be a turnoff down here. If there's not, we'll end it here. Flaps are coming back up. And I think that's going to conclude our flight. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to Joplin. Hope the video wasn't too painful for anyone. Hopefully I had a little bit of decent commentary. We'll see how it goes on our next one. Thank you all for tuning in, taking a peek, watching the video, watching any of the content I create on here. I do appreciate it. My kids think it's kind of cool that Dad makes videos and puts them on the internet. And so you guys watching those videos helps me make those videos, and then makes me seem cool to my kids while they're at school learning stuff today. So like I said, thank you all again for watching. hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you'll enjoy the next one too. Tune back in as we continue our journey towards the southeast United States. And I appreciate all of your support. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time. Happy simming.